Happy Friday, everyone. It's not going to be a fun day necessarily because our topic is kind of heavy. But if you just stick around to the end, it's going to get a little bit sad, but I do have a surprise to make it all worth it, and I promise it will be fun. I did want to clarify something from my last video, if only for my own peace of mind, but it did feel like after rewatching it that it looked like I was lecturing or otherwise being an insufferable know-it-all to my fellow guild members, and that was not my intention. I just kind of excitable and I make leaps of context with my brain, and I don't always communicate well to the people I'm actually talking to, and so pair that with actually also being an insufferable know-it-all and you kind of have the story of my life. I went from commenting on their video content to rabbit trailing on a certain issue of publishing squabbles that tend to come up that I kind of personally find tedious, which I'd love to talk about sometime, but this isn't it. And it has nothing at all to do with my fellow guild members or their opinions or their beliefs. It's my own feeling. Nobody came up to me about this. I do apologize if I'd stepped on anybody's toes or dragged anybody into the dumpster fire. That is my brain hijacking me and putting me on a soapbox and setting it on fire. Now I'm just getting confusing. Let's move on to shoutouts. I'm going to do shoutouts first because the rest of the video is kind of heavy. Lydia, thanks for disagreeing with me. I really do appreciate it. I did ask for opinions and I wanted a different perspective because I've had this debate in my head and I don't always know what to do with it. So I do love other people's perspectives on the topic. Once you mentioned it, I did realize that the word authentic that I used, authentic self or whatever, was not actually a good descriptor. You're very right, because it's not that a person is inauthentic for using a pen name. I personally felt like I was being inauthentic to myself, but really what I was thinking I was doing was justifying my dark personality over, having a lighter personality, because writers kind of influence people sometimes. Not that I ever plan to be an influencer or anything like that, but there's that aspect of why do I want to write about these dark topics, and am I going to glorify them? And if that ends up happening, do I want to be under a different name or not? Anybody having a pen name in order to protect a certain side of their persona is perfectly acceptable, because I do love your reasoning for having a pen name to protect certain aspects of your professional life. Perfectly reasonable. 100%. And then I also am glad that you kind of disagreed with me on Mary Shelley as well, because I always thought Frankenstein was more of a literary classic. It is definitely horror, and you're definitely right. Like, I didn't want to downplay that, but I love it that she was the one who kind of spearheaded that. But I also think that the horror genre has changed a lot over time, so I'm not sure how that impacts the type of authors it has. Writing from a male perspective is really fun. I do it a lot. I do love getting into a man's head and trying to turn my story from his perspective, trying to think in the way a man thinks. I always pretend to think I know what's going on in their heads, but I have to ask my husband sometimes. And I think that should be one of our challenges, is to gender swap some of our characters and try and write from another perspective to see how we can do it. I loved your character emojis and your text things. Those were so cute. I was wondering how you even did it. Probably symbols or something, but they were adorable. And also, you're adorable, and I love that you're wearing a hoodie. And I honestly miss wearing hoodies. It's hot, I miss it, and I really would love to wear a hoodie again sometime, so it was nostalgic for me. Joy, I had never heard of the paper Menagerie until you mentioned it, so I had to go read it last night, and you're right, it is sad. It is so sad, but I'm going to talk more about it in a little bit. And then I went and watched the Supernatural link, and oh my goodness, Supernatural gets to my heart very easily. Your point about putting yourself into the sad thing is 100% right. One of my favorite quotes is from Robert Frost. It's no surprise in the writer, no surprise in the reader. No tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. And that's one of my favorite quotes because I think readers can tell when the writer isn't invested in the story as much as they are, because there's none of that layering of authenticity in the characters. And so I think that you're right that if it's something that makes you cry, it's probably going to make your readers cry too, or at least be very sad. By the way, your point about childbirth as horror is actually quite spot on. My husband always compares it to Aliens, where the thing pops out of your stomach. The writer of Prometheus, the Alien prequel, had to be a man, because no woman, after giving herself a cesarean, for one, she should pass out, but laser or no, it doesn't matter. After giving yourself a cesarean, you're not going to staple yourself up, get in a suit, and run across a landscape and survive any length of time in an alien world where you can just like barely be exposed to a virus and turn into this crazy zombie thing. that is horrible, but it's not realistic horror. But as I was thinking about it, I'm like, well, actually, one of my favorite horror writers is a woman. It's Tess Gerritsen, and she writes amazing medical thriller horror that rides the line between realism and paranormal just enough that you think that it could actually happen. The things that she writes about could actually happen, and it's great. I highly recommend her. She's an excellent author. I am so sorry, you guys, but I can see my computer screen in my glasses, and there's nothing I can do about that, probably. Maybe that. Does that work? It's one of the horrors of wearing glasses, I guess. Okay, Jake, investment is the key? Definitely. Do you remember taking that one class at the Port Townsend Writers Conference? Talking about the hero's journey and how you had to have that inciting incident to get the characters out the door, and then you could start the whole journey, and there's these certain levels of highs and lows and whatever they hit. I do think, though, that you can also take that long journey and compact it into an implication at the beginning, like a short story sort of thing. One of the scariest short stories I ever read was a zombie story, but it was a dad trying to get across town to pick up his little son from a daycare. And I am telling you that that was one of the most horrifying, suspenseful, terrible, heart-wrenching stories I'd ever read, and it really was not that long. And so you can compact a whole lot of it. There has to be that journey, and it has to be implied, so you're absolutely correct. So, making our readers cry. One of my favorite topics, not necessarily making them cry, but the emotional layering in writing and all those things where you have to play on your readers' heartstrings and mess with your characters and get them invested and then smash them to pieces. That kind of thing is one of my favorite things to do in writing and talk about in writing as well. So I started out by trying to recognize some of my own triggers. I don't cry easily, but there are some triggers I have that instantly bring me to tears or make my throat close up or whatever. And here's a few of them. Family affection and found family affection. So you've got like the father and affection with the child, or the child who's been looking for a father her whole life, didn't know it even, but finds one, and then they have this great relationship, and it's so beautiful. It gets me right there. Child endangerment and or death, that one goes without saying. I am a mom. That's a nightmare. Men crying or otherwise being vulnerable. This is why Supernatural gets me, and why I was so hooked on Supernatural for a long time, because the two main characters, the two young men who are growing up in this really horrific lifestyle, honestly. Dean he's rough and ready and just, he doesn't want to show his emotions, and yet when he does, it's just that much more heart-wrenching. Sacrificial death of beloved character, underdog stories with happy twists, so that's happy crime, but I do love those. Reunions, rescues, redemption arcs, deep rock bottom desperation, just to name a few. Those are the kinds of things that do it. I did research last night with my husband by watching Logan. If any of you are familiar with the Wolverine series, it kind of doesn't fall anywhere, but it's one of those what if the superheroes got old sort of things. It's terribly violent, it's vulgar, it is dark. But if you want to see an excellently done, literary-esque movie, and it had some major heart-wrenching moments, because you know that this is a hardcore character, angsty, angry. You know the story of Wolverine over time, but he has reached a certain point where he is practically broken. And now he has to face losing not only things he loves, but also his own life, which was kind of impossible up to that point. So I recommend you watch it. It's really, really good. But look at it in kind of a literary perspective too, and just see those things that jump out at you that would make you cry. Endgame, those of us who are fans of the Avengers have watched it from the very beginning. We've watched all the movies in the MC universe, and it's just been a crazy, incredible ride, but we get to Endgame, and we know we are going to weep in this movie. There's no way, because they are starting at rock bottom. We've watched it all through, and you start at the end of Infinity War, and you start at rock bottom. The most heart-wrenching scene in that whole movie. I'll stick a spoiler tag in here until I'm done. Hawkeye. At the beginning, you know the way it starts, that he's going to lose his whole family. You already know that he's going to go down a dark path, because you see in the trailer that he is just like scary badass. But the point where he and Black Widow go to get the Soul Stone, and he has to fight with her he seems the obvious choice, right? Because he's lost everything. And she tricks him and flips off the cliff, and he holds on to her until he can't anymore and then has to let go. And it's like, this is his best friend, might as well be his sister. It's the last bit of family he has on Earth, and he is wrecked. Oh my gosh, that scene hits me more than any other scene in the whole series, because you can see it in his face. First of all, he's just a really good actor, but you know that character has seen some stuff. But at the very end, when he gets to have his family back, it's that much more poignant and that much more beautiful. Now, I wanted to analyze Paper Menagerie a little bit because Jake had mentioned that he wanted to think about what actually made it so sad. And part of it is because you've got this ungrateful character who doesn't know what he has until he's lost it. And when he's faced with looking at it again, he finally gets to see the secret behind why his mother was the way she was. I'm going to put the link down in the description now. If you want to pause here and go read the story so I don't spoil it for you, go do it. It's Joy's link. I'm sticking it in my description. Pause here, go read it. Okay, we're back. So anyway, he is completely ungrateful because he's living this wonderful life in America, and his mom has come from China and he doesn't understand what's going on with her, why she is the way she is. And finally, she dies, and then he finds out much later through these little things that she had made for him as a child that he used to cherish, that he kind of just forgot about. He finds out that she had been through some unspeakable things in her lifetime and had been a heroic survivor. And if you know anything about the Great Leap Forward or the Great Famines in China, which I've been reading about a lot lately, so that's an extra layer of heart-wrenching, just because the atrocities that were committed in China in the Great Leap Forward were unspeakable. I'm just going to leave it at that. But you know that she had sacrificed so much, and when she finally had a child, the sacrifices she made for her child were out of love, no longer fear, but she had to sacrifice her old fears for her son. And then he realizes this. Oh my gosh, it's quite the story. So go read it. It's good. So lastly, the best thing to do to make your readers feel the emotions of your characters is to use liberal description, at least in the emotional part. If you really want to mess with them, you have to be able to create scenarios that are layered with emotional qualities. You have to connect with the reader's emotions too. So if you enjoy a deep POV, like really getting into somebody's head and laying all of their thoughts and emotions out on the page, which romance tends to do, young adult tends to do, a little more in an annoying way, but that's a different rant for a different day, then you have to be able to use your descriptions in a way that will string your readers and characters along, but also not exhaust everyone so much that they're completely desensitized to the emotional payoff at the end. That's one thing that young adult fiction sometimes tends to do because they're teenagers and they feel a lot. And so you get a lot of this hyperbolic language, which is every fiber of my being, and I felt 100% XYZ, and it's always over the top. You're desensitized by the time it comes to the real big payoff, and you're just like, okay, fine. I know, you're having emotions, you're having feelings. Can you stop for a second so I can take a breath and move on with the action? So don't use too much hyperbolic language, but do layer your descriptions well so that you're piling on some of the angst for your characters. At the same time, one-trick ponies that have no emotional range, and to be clear, I'm talking about like major characters like your protagonist, not necessarily your supporting characters or your plot device characters, which can lack emotional depth. But if you always have a character like the big angsty hero who always defaults to anger and possessiveness, or the whiny, crying damsel in distress who always defaults to whining and crying and being in distress, then maybe it might be a little bit boring for the readers. You have to give them a little more growth or a little more something else to make them a little more enjoyable as characters. Even if you're not getting deep into your characters' heads, you still need to find a way to connect the action to the emotion, and enough so that the reader cares about the struggles that the characters are having. And so actions can speak just as loudly as words. Your characters don't have to say what they're feeling. They don't even have to think what they're feeling, but if you can see in their face, and if you can see in their eyes, if you can see by the way they move, or by the action that's happening, it doesn't even have to be from anybody else's perspective, but the writers who are at least envisioning these things, because body language is a large percentage of our communication as human beings. We have to use body language. So you have to describe body language in many occasions if you want that emotional connection. People do respond to it. So coming back to that quote from Robert Frost about no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader, if you can describe your sad tearjerker scenario in such a way as to draw real tears from your own eyes or make you want to cry, the likelihood of getting a reaction from your readers is much greater. So we've come this far, and the video's already long, but bear with me. I'm going to read something that I wrote kind of as an example. It's based on future events, so this has not happened yet. It's completely fiction, but it might not be. This week, we thought that we were going to be putting our dog to sleep because she's old and she's sick, and that didn't happen. But we have made an appointment for next Friday. I will not be doing a video next Friday, just so you know. It's about writing rituals. I really have no writing rituals. I write whenever I can, wherever I can, because I don't have time. So I don't have a lot of contribution to that topic. So I'm going to go ahead and take that week off, because that Friday we are going to take our dog for her last vet appointment. Now, it seems odd that we'd wait an entire week after making this decision, but she doesn't have all the signs of being physically ill. It's just dogs don't always show that. So we're going to give her time to, take the last of her medicine, let the boys have a little more time with her, and be able to take the time afterward to recover, which we don't really have that time this week. So I'm kind of a stoic person. I told you I don't cry very, very easily. There's certain things that do make me cry, but one of the things that gets me is seeing things through my children's eyes. Watching somebody else cry, I tend to shed sympathy tears sometimes. But when it comes to my kids, I feel so bad for them. My heart breaks for them, not as much for the dog. So get the Kleenex. I'm going to have some Kleenex too. I hope I make it through this. It's not very long. Please stay toward the end. I will not leave you on a sad note. I promise I've got something happy at the end. So please just stick with me. I will put a timestamp right here to tell you when the story is over, in case you do not want to cry today and you just want to skip it. Okay? Okay. Here we go. Ladybug. That's her. She's a golden retriever. We knew this day was coming. Your breed doesn't live so long, and as it became harder and harder for you to do your normal doggy things that make you happy, we knew we couldn't let you suffer until you were too broken to do anything at all. The tests had been done and the writing was on the wall. We spent a week loving on you, brushing you, getting used to the idea that we weren't going to have our semi-animate, dog-shaped rug around much longer. We weren't going to be tripping over you, sweeping up fluffy tumbleweeds of fur produced overnight, taking you downstairs to go outside constantly. At the same time, we knew we would be glad that you weren't home being lonely while we were out doing things without you, that you wouldn't be so bored when we weren't paying attention to you, that you would finally be pain-free and running after tennis balls and everything. I watched you lie on the floor and pant like it was any other vet appointment, my two young boys sitting by you and petting your soft golden curls, their eyes filling with tears while they tried to be brave in your last hour. I didn't expect them to make it this far. My youngest is a Viking, and not likely to shed tears, but he loved you, bad breath and all. My oldest is soft-hearted and emotional, much more like me, though I've taught myself to hold it inside until I was alone. He will be inconsolable soon, probably crying off and on tonight and for a few days. He cried when we put our old grumpy cat to sleep 4 months ago, and she hated him. I know this was going to be a longer recovery for him, and that's what breaks my heart about this decision. They talk to you and tell you you were the best dog in their sweet little boy voices. Your soft brown eyes, now clouded with old dog cataracts, will meet theirs, hazel and blue, and they'll know you loved them. My heart begins to crack a little more as the doctor inserts the needle into the catheter, and you lie there as passive as you always were, as trusting and sweet. The boys watch you easing to sleep, and the doctor says your heart has stopped. My husband helps console us all, and we spend some time with you. Soon we'll have your paw print to remind us of you, and some pictures of your pretty face. You were a good dog for us. I know I didn't deserve you. I hope you feel better now, and are lying in the middle of a hallway in a heavenly mansion, as is your wont, tripping up angels and making them sweep up your fur. Thank you for giving us the rest of your life, even when we were frustrated with each other. We will miss you, sweet girl. I'm going to pause and pull myself together, and then I swear I'll have a surprise for you. Okay. Alright, so I did promise that we were going to not end on a sad note, and so there are other ways to make your readers cry, and that's to make them cry-laugh. And every time I think about the ending of this story, I cry-laugh, because I'm not sure if it's complete embarrassment or if it's because it really is that funny. But this is a horrible, horrible story I wrote in like 5th or 6th grade, so don't judge adult me. It was kid me who was totally in love with Wesley Crusher. So I present to you A Star Trek Christmas. It was written for a class assignment, and I do recall reading it to my family, who remained kind. But this is the cringiest of stories. I'm not even kidding. Like, this is so much worse than the last one I read for you. Anyway, without further ado, A Star Trek Christmas. Mom, when are we going to have Christmas? Wesley asked one day when it was close to December 25th. I don't know if there is such a thing as Christmas here in space, said Dr. Crusher, kind of hoping that there was such a thing as Christmas in space herself. Dr. Crusher, report to the bridge on the double, the intercom suddenly yelled. Yes, sir. Dr. Crusher ran out the door. Wesley lay on the bed and thought about what his mother said. Wow, he thought. I don't think I'll be able to live without Christmas. Meanwhile, at the bridge, Lieutenant Yar was trying to revive a little girl that had fainted. She's okay, Dr. Crusher, Lieutenant Yar said. In his quarters, Wesley felt hot. He decided to go to the bridge, because I guess that's what one does when they're hot, like to cool off. He took the elevator. He got there when the girl revived. Wow, Wesley said. Who's she? I'm Serena, she said. Why are you here? Asked Captain Picard. I didn't put my dialogue in paragraphs. I didn't know to do that yet, so it's probably 4th grade. Why are you here? Asked Captain Picard. To answer the boy's question. They talked for a while, where Serena had come from and why she left. That's a sentence fragment. It's probably supposed to be about where Serena had come from and why she left. Here's some of my very fancy illustrations. Perspective is hard. It's medieval. That's what it is. So, is there Christmas in space? Wesley asked for the 5th time already. I only have one answer, Serena said. If you want Christmas in space, she pointed her finger, and it lit up. The finger lit up. Suddenly, a twinkling light, and then a beautiful Christmas tree. I'm really into sentence fragments at this age, apparently. Hooray for Serena! Hooray for Wesley! Everyone yelled. Please stay on the ship and be a part of our crew, Captain Picard said. I will stay and live with Wesley, Serena said. Hooray! Everyone yelled again. Keep Wesley out of our hair. This was the best Christmas, Wesley said as he went over to Serena. I'm glad you're happy, Wesley, Dr. Crusher said. Wesley took Serena to his quarters and fixed her room. This is a good Christmas indeed, Wesley said. The end. It's so bad. I can't. Oh, so bad. Oh, there's more pictures. Hooray. And I think there's one more here. Yeah, here we go. Anyway, I hope you had fun. I know that this probably sent you on a roller coaster too, but have a great weekend. I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.